Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC as it's more commonly known, is one of the biggest fast food restaurant chains in the world. The juicy yet crispy chicken they provide was at one point an impossible undertaking for fast food as it took so long to make. But a man by the name of Harlan Sanders changed everything when he created the KFC recipe the world now knows and loves. Harlan Sanders was born on September 9, 1890, in Henryville, Indiana. His early childhood was certainly challenging. Harlan's father died when he was only 6 years old, and his mother worked night and day to provide for him and his siblings. Because Harlan was the oldest, he looked after his younger siblings and learned how to cook for them. By 7 years old, he was a competent cook, which would lead to his passion for food in the future. But before that could happen, Harlan experienced many challenges. His mother remarried, and Harlan had a strained relationship with his stepfather. When he was in 7th grade, he dropped out of school and left his tumultuous home to try to find work elsewhere in Indiana. During his teen years, he held many odd jobs, including working as a farmhand, steamboat pilot, streetcar conductor, tire seller, and railroad fireman. Then, in 1906, when he was only 16 years old, Harlan falsified his personal documents and lied about his age to join the United States Army. He was honorably discharged after his time in Cuba in 1907 and returned to the southern states to get back to work. At this point, he decided to go to law school, pass the bar, and become a lawyer. But this job didn't work out either. Then he moved back to Indiana and sold insurance when he got fired once again for insubordination. It seemed that as much as Harlan Sanders wanted to work, he couldn't seem to hold a job doing anything. Luckily, everything changed for Harlan when he got a job at a gasoline service station in Kentucky. The owner of the Standard Oil Gas Company picked up young Harlan as he was hitchhiking across Tennessee and offered him a job running one of his gas stations. And then and there, Harlan took on yet another new profession in the hopes of finally finding a job he would be good at. Surprisingly, Harlan did well running his gas station, but only for a few years. Unfortunately, just as the business was starting to actually do well and turn a profit for young Harlan, the Great Depression hit, and everything changed. His Standard Oil gas station went under, and he was forced to look for another job yet again. And in the midst of the Depression, it should have been extremely challenging. However, he was almost immediately offered a job by the Shell Gas Company to run one of their stations. He took the job and moved to Corbin, Kentucky in 1930, hoping that this job would get him through the tough times he and his countrymen were facing. Harlan decided that in addition to selling gas, in order to stay afloat, he would also serve food to the weary travelers that passed through. At first, he sold ham, string beans, okra, biscuits, and fried chicken, and it was a wild success. By 1937, his food was well known not just around Kentucky, but in the surrounding states as well. Harlan was doing so well that he expanded his business to include a motel and a fully operational cafe. While his original gas station could only seat 6 people at a time at one small table, the new cafe could seat 140 people at one time. It was a big investment, but Harlan believed in this product. Unfortunately, with this expansion came a new problem. His fried chicken, which was the most popular item on the menu, took almost 30 minutes to prepare. And with the influx of people into the cafe, he simply couldn't fry the chicken fast enough to feed them all. But of course, it's usually in times of turmoil that great inventions are made. And that's exactly what happened to Harlan. At the time, a pressure cooker had just been invented, and he, as well as many other restaurants, was using it to pressure cook his vegetables. So Harlan decided to try cooking his famous fried chicken in the pressure cooker. After a few experimental failures, he found the perfect recipe and pressure to create mouth-wateringly, juicy, and crispy chicken in the pressure cooker in just 9 minutes. Shortly after figuring out exactly how to cook the chicken, he made another discovery that would change the culinary world. He made a spice rub for the chicken that he called his secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. He was now preparing the best fried chicken he and many others had ever had. Harlan started getting national recognition for his delicious chicken, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. In 1939, he built a second hotel and cafe, but just as soon as it was finished, the original business in Corbin, Kentucky, burned to the ground. As he was trying to rebuild his growing empire, World War II arrived, and there were very few tourists on the road stopping for food. So Harlan decided to sell his 2 locations and started working instead with established restaurants, selling his chicken to them instead of directly to customers. When the war was over, Harlan got back to his dream of owning his own restaurant chain and opened another location in Georgetown, Kentucky. And while this restaurant and motel certainly had its own set of ups and downs, including trouble with his original business partner, it did well, and Harlan thought that he had finally made it. But when a new interstate was constructed that would cut down the flow to his business significantly, Harlan realized he was in trouble. He sold the building in 1956, and Harlan was right back where he started. He was 66 years old and living on Social Security checks, and it seemed as though his dream would never come true. It was then that Harlan came up with a new idea, a restaurant franchise called Kentucky Fried Chicken. The now not-so-young Harlan loaded up his car with pressure cookers and spices and traveled around Kentucky trying to get roadside restaurants to sell his chicken and give him a cut of the profits. And luckily for Harlan, this crazy plan worked. He started selling his chicken not only to franchised restaurants, but also directly to customers who would come to him. He also sold his spice mix without telling anyone what was in his secret recipe. By 1963, there were over 600 Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants throughout the USA and Canada. Harlan had done what he had set out to do, and his chicken was now internationally famous. During this time, Harlan became known around the country as simply the Colonel. He was the face of Kentucky Fried Chicken and was never seen in public in anything other than his pristine white suit. While Harlan certainly did well for himself, things took a turn when he met a young lawyer named John Brown. Brown saw an opportunity and told Harlan that he should be focusing on soliciting sales around the country in a much more aggressive manner. But Harlan didn't believe in soliciting for sales and thought that his company was doing just fine without it. Brown had the idea that if he was the owner, he could expand KFC in ways that Harlan had never dreamed of. So Brown reached out to an extremely rich businessman, Jack Massey, and the 2 of them offered to buy Kentucky Fried Chicken from Harlan Sanders. Of course, Harlan didn't want to sell his business, but the 2 convinced him that in his old age, he should be enjoying his life, and if he didn't sell before he died, much of his empire would be lost to taxes. Their final offer was $2 million, about $15 million in today's economy, and much to their surprise, Harlan accepted the deal in 1964. Harlan kept the Canadian franchises but sold those in the United States to Brown and Massey. However, although he no longer controlled the American market, Harlan decided to stay on as the symbol of the company, the Colonel. Harlan traveled more than 200,000 miles every year promoting Kentucky Fried Chicken at public appearances throughout Canada and the United States. In 1976, he was named the 2nd most recognizable celebrity in the world. Throughout the 70s, Harlan was vocal in the press as to his disappointment in the quality of his product since selling. He often mentioned that the gravy and even the fried chicken were embarrassingly bad and absolutely nothing like he had made before giving up the reins. However, people continued to frequent KFC, and the company grew throughout the decade, opening more restaurants in North America as well as Europe and even Asia. In fact, KFC was the first Western chain restaurant to open in China. In 1980, Harlan, the Colonel Sanders, passed away at the age of 90. While he was certainly disappointed in how KFC had changed over the years, Harlan died a very wealthy man. And it's safe to say that because Harlan couldn't hold a job for the majority of his life and failed over and over again in his business ventures, it was quite an incredible feat that he became a millionaire worth over $3.5 million. There's no doubt that Harlan Sanders changed the world of fast food, and specifically fried chicken, forever, with his innovation and dedication to the business. However, the truth is that the KFC franchise really started to expand and become the empire we know it as today when Massey and Brown took over. The 2 held on to the company for only a few years, then sold it to a distributor who then sold it to PepsiCo. Over the years, KFC has changed hands several times and today is owned by Yum Brands, a company that also owns Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, and is one of the world's largest restaurant companies. Today, there are more than 22,621 KFC restaurants in over 150 countries around the world, making it the 2nd largest chain, only beaten by McDonald's. They employ 820,000 people, have an annual revenue of over $6 billion, and the company itself is currently valued at a whopping $10 billion. To think that this incredible conglomerate began with a jobless man selling chicken out of a gas station is almost unbelievable. But that is exactly what happened. Hungry for another fascinating business story? Click on the following video to hear the crazy story about the soldier who almost died and invented Coca-Cola.